Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you joined us today. My name is Rebecca Sofer, and this is our Light After Loss series on 1-800-Flowers Facebook page. Welcome to our Facebook Live for November. We have been doing this series for about 2 years now, and it's our monthly kind of deep dive, like pulling back the curtain into what it looks like to live with a mixed bag of feelings, not just the good, not just the bad, because I don't know anyone alive who's living with just one of those, but rather life. And I run something called Modern Loss, which is a global community and a publication centered on helping people to build community and have conversations and pull each other in across the long arc of living with loss and grieving and figuring out ways to help each other kind of create and find some meaning in the wake of really hard things. And also acknowledging that in the wake of really hard things, there's no such thing as it'll be over at some point. You're going to get over it. You know, the mixed bag is going to continue, but there are ways to fold in the losses, fold in the adversity that you faced in life, and kind of tease out something that is meaningful for you so that you can live in as rich a way as possible. Because, you know, at least in my opinion, you absolutely deserve to. You're still alive. And, you know, the 1-800-Flowers team agrees as well, which is why we're doing this series. And I just, you know, I love this team. I really love this brand because they understand that it's not just, oh, holiday time, let's pull out all the twinkling lights and let's shove everything that's not palatable under the bed emotionally. They know that it just doesn't work that way. And that's what we're going to talk about today, which is we are heading into dun dun dun, the holiday time, right? This is something that I both look forward to and dread every year. I literally do both of those things. Both of my parents died relatively close to each other when I was 30 years old. And since then, I have been living with the loss of my two greatest witnesses in life. The people who will never meet my kids, who will never meet the person I'm married to. And that makes the celebrations, which are, of course, sweet because there are new people in my life and I want to live as well as possible. You know, it just highlights who's not there every single year, every celebration. It's bittersweet. And that's okay. That's normal. But what I think is important is to figure out ways to kind of bring somebody's memory, bring somebody's energy, what they stood for, what they meant to you, the feelings that they gave you that you'd like to hold on to. How do you bring them forward into present day? And especially over a stretch where it's, you know, we're so focused on celebrating. We're so focused on, you know, lights and presents and, you know, fa la 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 la, I guess, if you're, you know, celebrate Christmas. How do you do that while also feel like you can bring up somebody who's no longer here in a meaningful way and not necessarily be a downer to everybody else? And so I am thrilled because I invited someone who is so much better at talking about this stuff than I am even. And I talk about this stuff every day. And we are very lucky to have him in conversation and Light After Loss today. His name is Rabbi Steve Leader. He is someone I look up to very much. I'm delighted that he is a guest today. He is the senior rabbi of Wilshire Boulevard Temple in Los Angeles and the author of such critically acclaimed books as For You When I'm Gone and The Beauty of What Remains. He is a graduate of Northwestern University, for everybody out there, studied at Trinity College Oxford and was ordained at Hebrew Union College. He's won tons of awards. He has an innate ability to kind of be very interdenominational and cross cultures in all of his conversations and reach across all aisles and all beliefs and all types of people. And that's one of the reasons I respect him greatly. You've probably also seen him all over media. He's been on CBS and ABC, all the letters. He's been everywhere and featured in the New York Times and the LA Times. And Steve, thank you so much for joining me today to have an important conversation about how to have important conversations.
Yes, you are so welcome, and I look up to you and the work you do every day, and I'm very proud to be doing this with you.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. So look, let's just, let's get into it. We're on the cusp of the holidays. We're teetering into, you know, going into a drugstore and listening to holiday music and seeing all the presents. And it's going to be an onslaught for about 2 months, right? I mean, if it hasn't started already, like Halloween now where I live starts in like August. So it's a lot. It's a lot when you're living with loss, and I want anybody who's watching this to think like you're also living maybe with other losses. Maybe you've had a relationship dissolve, maybe you've had a friendship go away, maybe who knows what you're living with. But the holidays can be a time where like the contrast feels like much greater, like what is not there can seem much more potent, right?
Yes, the way I put it is it's the absence that is forever present. It sounds impossible, but very often, especially when we're dealing with loss, the absence is the most present thing in our lives. And we tend not to think that that's even possible, but believe me, it's possible. I just gave a sermon in which I posed a question to the congregation, which was, what is the weight of an absence? How much does an absence weigh? How do you weigh something that isn't there or wasn't said or can't be said? And yet we carry these things as a burden in ways unlike the physical. So it's very real, and you're heading down the right path, I think, in recognizing it and giving ourselves permission to experience that absence that is present. There's an empty seat at the table for Thanksgiving for all of us.
Right. And we're still in some version of an ongoing pandemic. So we might even be in a position where we can't easily be with some of the people who might comfort us when we're living with that, that highlighted emptiness at the table.
Let's really lay it on the table. We might not want to be with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay too.
Right.
Because sometimes the holidays really hurt. You were right in your introduction about the duality of it all. I think you called it a mixed bag, that there's this duality to loss and to grief. There's a duality to memory. Memory is beautiful, yes, but it also really, really hurts sometimes. That's the tension that we feel more than ever at the anniversaries, the anniversary of the death, wedding anniversary, the birthday, Thanksgiving, and of course the holidays. And so I think, the first big idea that I would offer to everyone who's watching is that behind every no is a yes. This is a very powerful idea when it comes to the pain of the holidays. I'll say it one more time. Behind every no is a yes. Saying no to being at some party and a lot of booze and calories and happy people, saying no to that is saying yes to a long walk with your closest friend to talk about your broken heart, to a blanket, a fire, and a book and a cup of tea. You don't have to show up. You do not have to show up. And then we talk about, if you'd like to go there, okay, let's assume it's been a few years and I do want to show up, but I don't want to pretend. I don't want Thanksgiving dinner to be kabuki and let's all just pretend Dad's not missing.
Right. Right. How do we go to these gatherings and feel like, gosh, someone's got to say something. I want to talk about Dad. I want to talk about my miscarriage. I want to talk about what could have been and what was. Like, how do we allow ourselves to get to the point when we are saying yes to going to our gatherings, right? Or when we just find ourselves in a conversation with somebody during these holiday times and everything looks so twinkly, and we just want somebody to witness that we're missing our person and we want someone to know about them. How do we get to the point where we feel like, and particularly within families, right, who might be everybody is grieving differently. You have families who maybe one person's MO is just to shut down and not talk about anything, but some other people really do want to talk about that person. How do we get to the point where we can just open up and keep their memory with us?
You don't get there by showing up and hoping it somehow happens.
Mm-hmm.
You do it by being deliberate. Someone once asked me what my job was, and I said, I structure chaos. That's my job. When people's lives are falling apart, I walk in. I happen to have a particular faith and tradition that does it one way, but there are a lot of ways to do it. So let's structure the chaos of feelings and the pain of loss. How? Here's some simple suggestions. Hey, Mom, how about we have Dad's favorite dessert for Thanksgiving this year? I know it's not pumpkin or pecan pie. I know it was a hot fudge sundae, but let's do that and let's celebrate that. Or I'm one of 5. I have 4 siblings. And, you know, when we get together, I'm the one, of course, who says, hey, let's all take a moment and go around the table and share one of our favorite memories of Dad. My father taught in little Yiddish aphorisms, Yiddishisms. He summed up an entire worldview with a single expression, you know. So I said, let's each share our favorite expression from Dad that we've over the past, you know, year. And let's create a vessel for these feelings. And anybody that wants to pass can pass. Like I don't really want to. Fine. But it will not happen by accident. It will not happen by omission. It has to be, It should be deliberate. And knowing that it's deliberate also, I think, helps us prepare emotionally and psychologically for it happening. Like, I know when we get there, we're going to light a candle and each share a memory about Dad. I find, of course, that things are better by addressing them. Nothing gets better by waiting except wine and teenagers. Okay. Those are the only 2 things that get better by waiting. Don't wait to address these things during the holidays.
Yeah, I feel like we hear from Modern Loss community members a lot that they just wish that someone would give an invitation to talk about their person. And you're saying that you can't just wait. Exactly. You're saying that and anybody who's listening for whom the holidays is tough because you're missing that person, it's true. Steve is right. I mean, this sounds a little tough lovey, but it's just true. I've learned it from personal experience. You cannot stand on ceremony here. Sometimes you need to offer the invitation. You need to be the one, because you might be at the table, at the gathering, at your ritual where you may be decorating the tree, or maybe you're making latkes, or maybe you're prepping for Kwanzaa, or just like getting ready for New Year's. And you always did that thing beforehand. You always did that like silly thing, that silly tradition, and someone is missing. And you so badly want to talk about that person because it feels like it's just coming out of you. And it might be that you're the one who has to give everybody permission.
Well, it not only might be, it definitely is, because what I have found, and this goes far beyond grief and loss, what most people regret most are not the things they've done. They're the things they haven't done, the words they haven't said. This is when I'm sitting with people at the end of their lives. Their regrets that they share are about, in religious terms, we would call it a sin. In secular terms, we would call it a mistake. So let's call it a mistake. The mistakes of omission, the opportunities lost. And if it's in your heart to speak about your loved one, don't lose the opportunity. That's its own kind of afterlife for your loved one.
That's actually really nice. I mean, it doesn't even matter what you believe. It's just a way, when you say afterlife, it's just a way to keep their energy with you, keep their presence with you,
and to share it, not just keep it within you, to share it. I literally last night had dinner with one of my sisters in Palm Springs. One of the first things I said when I walked in the door, because my parents had a condo in Palm Springs for, forever. And we used to take our kids there when they were little. And the first thing I did was, when I walked in the door, I said, driving here just makes me miss Dad so much. I just said it. I was feeling it. And we both felt something very real, including, in a way, my father.
I think it's nice. I mean, I think that like it's also hard. Look, let's be honest. For both of us, you and I have had losses that occurred years ago, right? We're not in those early days. We're not like little grief zygotes at this point. But for people for whom, this is their first year, maybe after a significant loss, maybe this is their first holiday season, maybe they don't, maybe we say it is incumbent upon you sometimes to be the person, to give the invitation, right? But what if you don't want to come out with what you want to say? What if you just want to make it clear that you wish somebody would recognize that you're missing somebody, that you wish they would reach out to you? What are some ways in which we can kind of ask for some verbal support ourselves at these celebrations or during the holiday time, instead of just piecing out on celebrations, which is always permissible, of course.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would recommend that you're only around people who intuitively would do that and understand that. I don't think year one is a great year to be at massive parties and around a bunch of happy people. I think that exacerbates the pain. It doesn't mitigate, it exacerbates. So be to yourself. And you know what? If people don't like it, hey, I'm just not up for it this year. I'm just going to stay home with a couple of my closest friends. I don't want to travel. I don't want to be at a big party. I don't want to be dancing and singing. I'm just going to dial it down this year. If people don't like it, here's the way I put it. It's very glib, but it's very helpful. The people who really matter, they don't mind. And the people who mind, they don't matter. They don't matter. Okay? Take care of yourself. So I would say in year one, year two, however many years it is, because we know that grief is nonlinear. It's much more like waves. You curate your own experience, which really means you curate the people you choose to be around. And people with whom you have complete comfort saying, such a painful time. Would you mind just sharing a story or two about Dad?
Yeah.
And
I did that one. I asked people. Well, there was one year. It was around the holidays, and my dad died on December 17th, which is like extra fun because it's right in the height of everything. And I think it was maybe a couple years after he died, and I just got to the point where I just felt like I wanted to talk about him so much, and I wanted not just to talk about him, but I wanted other people to talk about him to me. And I did get the invitation, and I sent, and I would say like this from personal experience is an excellent idea if I say so myself. I sent an email to the people who I thought would be okay getting it. And if they weren't, that's okay. They didn't have to read the email or respond to it. I just kind of did a BCC email. And I said, listen, the holidays are tough. I'm missing my dad. My dad, I miss talking about how he used to embarrass me by when I would complain about, and this is true, I would complain about not having lights at our house because we're Jewish, and I always wanted twinkly lights outside our house, outside Philadelphia. That's where I grew up. And so one day he said, "You want lights? Okay." And he went to a lumber yard and he bought so many 2x4s, and he was not a carpenter. He was like a Clark Griswold character, and he constructed a menorah that was about 10 feet tall out of 2x4s, and he wrapped them in holiday
lights. That's great.
It was totally humiliating. Absolutely. And then, of course, now, it became like a drive-by for people. People are like, look at the house, like amazing. And it became like a must stop every year outside Philly. And it was so humiliating and also kind of amazing. I felt really special that like we had this weird menorah in our front yard. And so I missed talking about that. I missed people saying, remember when your dad did this? Because I knew they remembered. And I sent an email out and I said, listen, I'm probably not going to see a lot of you because a lot of these people were in Philadelphia. I'm, in New York City. Yeah. And I said, but I miss him. If you could just send me an anecdote, like a favorite memory that you have of him that I might not have ever known. Like, I just think that was really nice for me because I got access to things that I really wouldn't have known, and I did that also with my mom, and her dental hygienist sent me an anecdote. So you never know.
Well, and you can even structure that further, right? Because you can provide the prompt. For example, when was the time you saw my dad at his happiest?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What was the most embarrassing thing you ever experienced with my dad? What made my dad happy?
Yeah.
What was my father's greatest regret? You can really be specific.
Yeah.
I wrote a whole book about this. Like, how do you structure these conversations? Now, this is one of the beautiful things about memory. Only human beings have this ability, Rebecca. Neurobiologists call it homo duplex. In other words, only human beings can live in two dimensions of time in the same moment. We can remember the past and bring it into the present and carry this into the future. No other creature can do that. Squirrels remember where like maybe half of the nuts are that they buried, and it's all instinctual. Dogs remember us because of the way we smell and they feed us, but they don't remember if we've been gone for 2 minutes or 2 hours or 2 years. Right. Only human beings. So we can revisit the past in the present. So if I were sitting around your Thanksgiving table with you and your family, I would take you on a mental vacation. I would say, Rebecca, what was like the greatest vacation you ever took with your family? Where was it? Describe your parents to me. I would say, Rebecca, did your parents ever talk to you about their romance? Like when was their first kiss? Where was it? Did your parents—
I actually know the answer to their first kiss, which is very weird. I mean, it's
tell us.
They would tell me all the time, oh, their first kiss was outside the Irish pub in Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia after their first date. And they both professed that they knew that they were going to end up together. I don't
And who made the first move? Who made the first move? Mom or your dad?
Oh, I'm sure it was my father. I'm sure. I do love that.
From that moment on, were they an item? Was that it? First date?
Oh, that was it. That was it. My mom was living in San Francisco and she was in Philadelphia on summer vacation. She was a public school teacher. She moved back to Philadelphia, and the rest is history.
Your dad must have been quite a kisser, right?
Yeah, he was very convincing. And I don't want to think about my father's kissing, but
it does. But now, do you see what just happened?
Right. Yeah. See,
he's here.
You did your magic on me and you showed what it can do to others. It's true.
It's such a beautiful thing. If you just ask the right questions, you go on this beautiful journey.
Yeah.
And that way the past becomes present. And it's so beautiful.
That's a really nice way of putting it. I mean, the past really does become present, and it shows that your relationship still lives on, even though it's sometimes hard to remember that and even believe it, maybe in the early days. And if you're in the early days, I assure you, there's nothing wrong with you for not believing what I'm saying, that the relationship lives on, because grief can be really painful and you can believe whatever you want to believe in those early days.
When I sit with families the day before the funeral to prepare them, and to prepare myself, frankly, to get to the truth of a person's life, take them on a 2-hour mental vacation.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And we laugh and we cry.
Yeah.
And the kids look at and the grandchildren look at their mother and grandmother and say, you did? He what? And it is bittersweet and very beautiful.
It really is. I mean, it really is what you just did. I love that. And I feel like, you just gave a really nice template for almost like a script for people. Like all you have to do is just write down a couple questions. And guess what? If you want somebody to ask you those questions, hopefully you have at least one person in your life who you feel comfortable saying, listen,
Yeah.
I just want to talk about this stuff. Come up with a couple things that you'd like, or can you just come up with some questions? Can we reserve like whatever, like the Tuesday before Thanksgiving
That's
to go
right.
out for
That's
whatever and talk about this stuff? It doesn't have to be at holiday celebrations. It can be whenever you want it to be. But the biggest thing that I think you and I are encouraging everybody to do is to make the effort to be mindful enough to fold this in to, of course, all times of year, but especially these times when the absence can be just so incredibly highlighted against all the revelry
yeah.
that supposedly everybody is happy in the holidays. When we look on Instagram, we all know that's not the case.
It's
But
not the case even when there isn't loss.
right.
Because there's no such thing as a functional family. Every family is dysfunctional. And it's not easy. And so these are difficult times for all of us. This is a myth, that it's only happiness. No, it's not only happiness. Yeah. There's friction, there's favoritism, there's jealousy. No matter what your age, when you and your siblings get together again, particularly with your parents, elderly parents, you all become children again. And, it doesn't take very long. So, and there's, by the way, it's a tremendously difficult time for people who have addiction and substance abuse problems. It's another reason to say no, which is then saying yes to your mental health. So there are many, many opportunities to find the yes behind the no and to deal with the people who really matter, and to honor your own heart and your losses.
Now, let me ask you just one last question, because we're almost out of time. Sadly, I think you and I could get into this for many hours. And I feel like even when you just did that exercise about my parents' first kiss, which now apparently is going to live on in the internet forever. So that's kind of nice. Like, my parents weren't really online. So now their first kiss is going to be online forever. I found that, talking about my people who are no longer here, make it even more clear how important it is to me to talk more in depth with my people who are here, right? Like, while it can be a two-sided conversation.
Yes.
And so, last question to you, like, how can we kind of pull that experience of remembering someone with others into giving invitations to just talk with each other about ourselves, so that we don't have that at the end of our lives, like, oh, I wish I would have, like, I wish we would have,
Another omission, right? Well, first of all, let me stress the importance of that question, because in my case, I had no idea my last conversation with my dad was my last conversation with my dad. No idea. One visit to the nursing home, we could converse and understand each other. My next visit 2 months later, he had stopped speaking and never spoke again for the rest of his life. Kafka said the meaning of life is that it ends. And it really is that simple. And that really is why your question is such an important question. I literally wrote a book to help people have these conversations. It's called For You When I Am Gone. And the subtitle is 12 Essential Questions to Tell a Life Story. It is not for people who are dying. It is for people who really want to live and want to tell their truth and want to be asked these questions and want to ask these questions of others. And these 12 questions are really based on these, what clergy call intake meetings with families to prepare them for the funeral, where I'm trying to get to the truth of a person's life, not the facts, Rebecca. Obituaries tell you the facts, but a eulogy tells you the truth. And why wait till you're dead for your truth to be shared, or to share your truth, right? So you should, I don't care if you buy the book or not, just go write down the 12 questions and have the conversation with the people you love. What makes you happy? What is a good person? When was the time you led with your heart and not your mind? We know this about your mother already, right? When she moved from San Francisco to Philly, what do you want your final blessing to be? What was your greatest failure? What's your greatest regret? What is love? What is love? How do you understand it? Ask these questions, and you will have an amazing journey. And yes, it should not only be about people who have died.
Yeah, I love that, Steve. I mean, yes, your book is beautiful. And yes, I do agree. This is not a book plug. You're never making another penny off of that. This is more like showing the importance, the content of what you wrote is just, it's true. Because I think that when we do allow ourselves to connect with each other in ways that are vulnerable and raw and real and without scruples, without embarrassment, and they can maybe happen in the same settings, during the holidays when we're seeing some loved ones, when we're talking about the people who are no longer here, maybe tease those questions into asking them to Owen, what about you? Like, I know you talked about Dad. What about you? It can get us to a place of like more empathy with each other and deeper connection.
It's everything. There's a poet, Muriel Rukeyser wrote this poem in which she says that the world is not made up of atoms. It's made up of stories. Mm-hmm. And that's really true. We are our story.
We are.
But only if we tell it.
Yeah. Well, I don't see any other more poignant way to end this episode than that. We are our stories. We're made up of our stories. Rabbi Steve Leder, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. Really, I'm just so grateful. Whenever you speak, it's worth hearing. Congratulations, and thank you for your work in this world. And everybody who's watching today, I hope that you got something out of this conversation. I'm very moved right now. And I'm so glad you joined Light After Loss. There are so many other episodes available on Facebook. Just look on 1-800-Flowers Facebook page. And if you have any comments or questions, you want to remember someone, say their name in the comments, write a question at the end. We're going to be hopping on after this and getting back to you. So thank you so much for being with us today. And I hope that you have a very meaningful holiday season.
Thank you. It's my honor. I have one suggestion for you. I think you should reach out. Is that Irish pub still there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's never going away.
I think you should.
When would an Irish pub go out of business?
I think you should ask them if you can put up a little tiny plaque somewhere what were your parents' first names?
Shelby and Ray.
Shelby and Ray's first.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad idea. I love that. That's where the memorial plaque will be, at the Irish pub for the two Jews who kissed.
Perfect.
I love it. Thank you so much.
So well.
Okay, take good care. Bye.